refer to this again. Okay, so the first topic will be about injury prevention, and I want to focus on active dynamic warm-up versus static stretching. And then we'll discuss smart training a little bit about keeping the brain actively engaged in your training. And then innovative training, we're going to discuss some newer information about how to literally train the brain to help with sports performance as well as to prevent injury. And I'm not going to discuss proper nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist, but I do believe that proper nutrition is essential for injury prevention as well as for performance. So we're going to go right into active dynamic warm-up versus static stretching. And this is information, it's been researched for at least 20 years. So a lot of people already know this information, but not everyone does. And I think it's really important. So we are going to review this here. So what I'm talking about with active dynamic warm-up is just ways to get blood flow going to the muscles and get them warmed up, as well as getting your brain and your nervous system involved and creating muscle flexibility versus static stretching. So it's also because it's more effective. It's actually more effective than static stretching to create long-term flexibility in muscles, and it's safer than static stretching. And what I mean by safer is there's a sensor in every muscle called the muscle spindle, and it's there as a protective mechanism. So if you're putting a muscle that's cold first thing in the morning or a muscle that's injured on a large stretch, and as you start to stretch that muscle too much, and you won't know you're stretching it too much, but there's that little sensor in the muscle called the muscle spindle senses that, and it sends a signal it goes, and it sends a signal to your brain, and then your brain shoots a signal back down to the muscle, and it actually tells the muscle to tighten down more, because if you were to stretch it too far past where it can really go, you might risk tearing it. So it's a protective mechanism. And then research has also shown that static stretching can actually lead to a 30% decrease in muscle strength. It's a short window of time that happens, but you certainly don't want to decrease muscle strength right before you're about to compete. So what I did is I recorded videos. I'm going to show you videos during this presentation rather than trying to take the time to move my laptop and show you in person. So, but this can be interactive. So if you have enough room where you are right now, you can actually try this. And this is just a demonstration of what I'm talking about. So you can have a personal experience of releasing your hamstrings and the muscles in the back of the legs without actually putting them on a static stretch. So I'm going to go ahead and play the video and you can follow along.
No sound.
Melinda, we cannot hear the sound from the video.
Oh, you can't hear the sound. Okay. And I want you to stay in that squat for 10 to 12 seconds. If you're doing it right now. And you're going to do 3 of those in a row, holding each one for 10 to 12 seconds. So yeah, did everybody get that? So that's just a test to show you that how isometrically contracting muscles actually gets them to release better than static stretching. Okay, and so examples of active dynamic warm-up, there's quite a few things you can work with, and there's a multitude of videos now online demonstrating active dynamic warm-up. I have recorded a video, which if you can't hear, I won't play it right now because if you can't hear it, but this just gives a good kind of the beginning active dynamic warm-up that you would start with before you start training. So you would do, in this video, I talk about doing 3 isometric squats, followed by leg swings forward and back, followed by sideways leg swings, then a trunk twist, and then a little hacky sack movement, like you're playing hacky sack, and then arm swings, arm circles, especially if your sport involves the upper body. So that video, you'll have access to it later. Okay. And then just some pointers. You want to start with those easier warm-up activities that I show in the video, and then you can add in activities like jumping rope, light jogging, spinning on a stationary bike with low resistance, and then progress to more complex active dynamic warm-up exercises once there's more blood flow going to the muscles, so that you'll be less likely to injure yourself. And that could include things like squat jumps, butt kickers, high kicks, more ballistic type movements that are getting you ready for your sport. And then you can also work with sport-specific dynamic warm-up activities. So if you're a figure skater or an ice hockey player, you would do some stroking on the ice as part of your warm-up. If you're a baseball pitcher, you would just do a repetitive movement like you're doing that motion. Same thing with tennis, etc. Okay, so those are ideas for active dynamic warm-up. It's just important to do those kinds of things before you train or compete, and you'll be much less likely to injure yourself when you are training or competing, or much less likely to pull a muscle. And it also, you're going to be more flexible over the long term than if you only static stretch. Okay, and then another thing that I feel like is very important for injury prevention as well as performance is to work on lower extremity stabilization as well as core stabilization. But because there's limited time here, I'm not going to go through that, but I've included this video clip of one of my favorite lower extremity and core stabilization exercises, as well as a progression of that exercise. And in this video, these videos were actually made for figure skaters. So in this progression, I'm showing you balancing on this half foam roller because it mimics a skate blade, so it's more functional. So that's great as a functional exercise for hockey players or figure skaters, but actually for anyone, because it's really difficult to balance on this and then move your leg against some resistance. But I think a good progression is get really good with it on just standing on the ground, and then maybe progress to like a foam pad of some kind. And that's a little bit more difficult than standing on the ground. And then progress to the half foam roller. That would be what I would recommend. Okay. Then what I mean by smart training is just keeping your brain engaged by reducing too much repetition of any one skill. And that will help reduce the incidence of injury. So it's a bit of a balance between doing enough repetition of a skill, especially a new skill that you're learning, and then sliding over into overdoing it. And then your brain actually shuts down. And once you've done too much repetition of one activity, the brain disengages, and then you're not getting as much benefit out of it. And then you're actually more likely to injure yourself. So you'll need help from your coaches with kind of where that line is of getting enough repetition, but sliding into overtraining, too much repetition. Along with this, with smart training, is don't overtrain. This can definitely lead to injury. People might tend to do 1,000,000 repetitions of the same jump if they're learning a new jump on the same session, where they're going over and over and over and over. And that's too much repetitive impact, which can lead to injury. So work on different jumps in a session to mix it up and spread out the impact loading. And then you also want proper recovery time. So you want to take at least 1 day off from training each week, if not a day and a half or 2 days. And then I think cross training is also important, so that you're working with different movement patterns in the body. So not just only doing your sport, but kind of mix it up, even if you're adding in some running, or if you're a hockey player or a tennis player, do running or some cycling, just to mix it up so you're not always doing the same movement patterns over and over again. Okay, now let's go to innovative training and talk about actually training the brain. This is a little bit newer information and it's pretty cool. So I've actually come full circle. I have a degree in physical therapy, but my first degree was in psychology, specifically in neuroscience, the study of the brain and the nervous system. So I've actually been bringing that more and more into my current work, both with low intensity light therapy. We're actually doing quite a bit with the brain now and working with concussions and brain injury and getting exciting results for Parkinson's disease and dementia. But also working with training the brain with athletes. So today I'm going to show you how to test the functioning of your cerebellum and then how to train your cerebellum to help in your sport. So what is the cerebellum? That is an area of your brain at the base of the brain. It's kind of looks like a walnut. It's a little bigger than a walnut, but it's a very important part of the brain for balance and movement coordination and fine motor control, some aspects of reaction time. And then newer research is actually showing that this area of our brain is also involved in memory, which is important. And that would help definitely improve your performance, but may also help with reducing the risk of injury. So I'm going to try playing this video. Let's see if you can hear it more, because I have a YouTube channel, and this is from my YouTube channel. So this will show how to test the cerebellum. And if you want to try this right now at home, you can. You're just going to need 2 pens or pencils. Okay. So I want to. Oh, that's even softer. That's too. You can't hear that. Okay, let me pause it. So let me just walk you through these right now so you can hear me. And then you'll have access to the videos later. But so what I'll do is I'm going to move my laptop and maybe you can see me and I'll actually show you. I'll see if this works. So I'm going to show my feet because I want you to see the ground, okay? Okay, so you're going to take your pins and put them on the ground right in front of each other. Okay. I think you can see what I'm doing. And get your balance on one foot. And then you're going to trace a figure 8 with your other foot, going in and out between those pins, okay? So kind of get the hang of it. You're going to go 8 times in one direction and then 8, then you'll reverse the movement and go the other way. But what you want to try to do is go as fast as you can.
Sorry, we cannot see in the Zoom.
Can you see my feet?
I cannot see in the Zoom.
Yes, I can. You have to click on the other side. The other window.
The other
main
window.
Yeah. No, not you, like users.
Melinda, you
We can
okay?
see you.
Yeah, Melinda, you were fine. We can
I was
see.
fine?
Yeah, you were fine. I think
Someone-
just
okay,
the audience, didn't.
Yeah,
look-
some audience
okay.
couldn't figure out how to see
Yeah,
you.
you were doing
Oh.
fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you get the idea. You want to go as fast as you can and then switch legs. And you'll probably see pretty quickly that one side was easier than the other and one is much more difficult. And then you'll reverse direction. If you're on the more difficult side, you're probably going to hit the pin and knock it out of the way. But so you want to just see if one side was more difficult than the other or not. Okay, that's the first test. Then the second test is more of is for the upper body. Yeah, I think you can see me. So you'll let's put your right arm and hand out in front of you, palm up. Then you can slap the other hand down on top of it. And then you're going to go palm up, palm down as fast as you can for about 10, 20 seconds. Then switch and try it on the other side. And just notice if one side was easier than the other, easier to coordinate that movement, easier to go faster. Okay. Then the third test is a balance test with your eyes closed. So you won't be able to see my whole body, but you're just gonna, this is easy. You're just standing with your feet and legs together, and then you're gonna close your eyes and try to balance for 10 or 20 seconds, just noticing how much you sway, how much you're swaying in your feet and your ankles, how stable or unstable you are if your eyes are closed when you're trying to balance. Then we're going to go through these drills, and then at home you would come back and retest those 3 tests and just see if you've improved. Okay, so I've also typed out the tests, described them in writing, and so you have a video you can access when you get the copy of this presentation later, or access it on YouTube. And then I've written out the instructions for each of the tests. Okay, so here is and these are just three examples. I found there are several videos online on YouTube where people I actually accessed this from somebody off of YouTube because I thought she did a great job. So these are just some examples, but there's quite a few things out there. Okay, so let's see. So the first one was actually part of, oh, you know what, you guys? that figure 8, that actually is one of the exercises. So let me go back and show you. Sorry about that. The test is simpler. The actual test is simpler than that drill. That's one of the drills that you'll work on to improve your movement coordination. But the test itself, which can actually be used, you can do these tests as exercises too. Can't see my feet. Okay, so you put your pins on the ground and they're, they're touching each other. Okay, and then you're going to have one balance on one leg and have your other heel just directly behind the pins. And then you're going to move that. I have much worse time trying to coordinate my left leg compared to moving my right leg. So that's the test. Sorry about that. But that can actually be used as an exercise as well. Okay, so I have already shown you exercise number 1. That's the figure 8. You're balancing on one leg and tracing a figure 8 with your other. Okay, then this one is going to be more tricky to show you. I'll try to demonstrate it here in real time, but you've got this video to access. So you're basically traveling sideways in one direction while your head is turned in the opposite direction, which is more difficult than it sounds. So you start slow and then you gradually speed it up, but you're going to have you put 2 pins on the ground and you hop over them while your head is turned in the other direction. So I don't think you're going to be able to see me, but if I'm going to travel to the right, I'm going to have my head turned to the left. So I'm going to hop over those pins. Now I'll turn my head to the right as I go back to the left. Hop, 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 hop. And you just keep switching. And you try to speed it up and go as fast as you can as you're turning in the other direction, and work with that for maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Okay, then the third exercise drill, I'm out of breath now, for the cerebellum. These are actually eye movement exercises, and eye movement is actually extremely important in sports. And a lot of athletes don't train the eyes that I'm aware of. And I think after this information, you improve your motor control in sports. So this is pretty simple to do. You just take 2 pins, hold one about reading distance in front of you, and then the other one is at arm's length. And you're going to shift your gaze from the pin that's closest to you to the pin that's farthest away. And you just go back and forth. Near pin, far pin, near pin, far pin, for maybe 20 or 30 seconds. Then hold one of the pins out to the right of you and go back and forth from the near pin to the far pin. 20, 30 seconds. Then have a pin off to the left and go from the near pin to the far pin to the left. 20 or 30 seconds. Okay. Then another eye exercise that I show in this video is you're going to be doing squats while you keep your gaze focused on the pin. So hold a pin out in front of you and you're just going to do squats while you keep your eyes focused on the tip of that pin. So you're adding in movement with the eyes. And do like 10 or 15 squats. So that's a pretty simple one, but it actually does help train the cerebellum. Okay, moving back over here. Okay. And I've written those out as well, those drills. Okay. Now, what I wanted to discuss with just briefly with if you are injured, what things that you can do, and we're going to finish up and around that discussion and discuss low intensity light therapy for treating sports injuries as well as concussions. So if you sustain an injury, then it's super important that you get, here we go, that you get evaluated and treated. So have a team in place already, whether that's with a physical therapist or an athletic trainer, massage therapist, acupuncturist, or if you are fortunate enough to live in the Bay Area, then with Dr. Haydig. And then some tools to combat injury, definitely going to get acupuncture or dry needling with a physical therapist. Kinesiology taping is quite effective, and I'm in the middle of creating video clips of how some basic taping that I'll be putting on my website. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to have my email address. So if you're interested in getting on my email newsletter list and then also having access to these videos on our website. And then low intensity light therapy, we'll talk about that. So appropriate rest is important. If you do get injured, a big mistake many athletes make is pushing through pain, and this can just delay recovery. Pain is a signal from your brain that something is wrong, so you need to learn to listen to that and try to learn the pain scale, which it's subjective, but it's pretty useful. So 0 out of 10 pain means you have no pain. A 10 out of 10 is severe extreme pain, like somebody is shoving an ice pick in you. So that's 10 out of 10 pain, and you should not train and go seek help. If you have 10 out of 10 pain, you maybe need to go to the emergency room. So my general rule of thumb has just been to tell athletes to not push past a 3 to 4 out of 10 pain level while they're training. Keep training, don't just stop training as long as you are able to. If it's a ankle fracture, then you may have to take more time off and not train at all. But performing all the skills that don't create more than a 3 to 4 out of 10 pain level. So keep your brain active, keep your brain in the game, keep training, but don't train the skills that are more than around a 4 out of 10 pain level. Okay, now let's spend a bit of time on photobiomodulation. I've got maybe 10 more minutes here. So again, just refer to the presentation if we run out of time. But I have been working with and studying, it's called photobiomodulation. That's the term that the scientific community has given to refer to low intensity light therapy, low intensity laser therapy, low level laser therapy. There's a bunch of names for the same thing, and that's why they landed on photobiomodulation, because that actually explains what the light is doing. Oops, backwards there. Okay, and I would say that this is the best thing I have found in my entire career for healing injuries, especially acute sports injuries or concussions. And there's actually nothing else out there that can heal the brain, and light actually can. So what is it? Low intensity light therapy is just the utilization of red light photons and near infrared light photons to promote a tissue healing response at a cellular level. And so we're talking about the light that's in the red range, so about 610 nanometers or so, and then going into the near infrared range, and that's around 830 nanometers approximately, all the way up to about 1,070 nanometers. That would be far infrared, but so that's the range of light we're talking
有
about.
在练习。
Okay. And so what happens if we apply red light or near infrared light to human tissue or animal tissue, it has several things happen. This big cascade of effects happen. It primarily acts on the mitochondria of our cells, and it improves mitochondrial health and functioning. It helps the mitochondria produce more ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and that's what our cells use as an energy packet. And it stimulates DNA protein synthesis, which leads to the production of new healthy cells. So new muscle cells, tendon, bone cells with fracture healing, nerve cells, and even brain cells. And there's quite a bit of research that's been done on this in the last several decades. It also stimulates a portion of our white blood cells called the macrophages. And they're like little Pac-Men. So when we get injured, they go in and clean up scar tissue and debris. So it boosts those cells to help reduce scar tissue in an injured area. And light therapy is not new. It was actually, the first research was done in Europe in 1967, and a scientist wanted to see, well, what does this, it was a red laser he was using at the time. He wanted to see if it would cause cancer. So he shaved some mice. He actually implanted tumors in the mice, and then he used the red light laser, and it did not cause cancer at all. But what he noticed was the wounds healed much faster on the mice, and the hair grew back rapidly on the mice. So that was kind of the advent of studying the use of red light and near infrared light for injury healing. And there's over 500 controlled trials and over 5,000 published papers so far on the efficacy and safety of this treatment. The US we're a little behind the curve, because again, in Europe, they started studying this in 1967. The group of physicians that I work with in Toronto, Canada, have been using and researching this for 35 years. But in 1993, NASA was the first group in the United States to study this, and now they actually use it on the space station to treat astronaut injuries. And there's a large group at Massachusetts General Hospital. It's a Harvard-based program, and they're studying it quite a bit right now with neurological disorders like dementia and Parkinson's, major depressive disorder, and they're publishing. They're getting great results. So it definitely works, but this is essential, the correct type of equipment and the correct protocols. That's essential for success with low intensity light therapy, low level laser therapy. Too high a power or too low a power won't work. And the problem is that, at least in this country, in the United States, most US-based laser systems are way too high powered. They're what they call class 4 lasers. And that just means anything that's above 500 milliwatts of power is considered class 4. And what works to stimulate this tissue healing response is anywhere between 200 milliwatts of power up to about 1,000 milliwatts. You can actually get a result with 1 watt or 1,000 milliwatts. But these class 4 lasers a lot of them are 40,000 milliwatts, 50,000 milliwatts, and that produces heat, and it can actually inhibit tissue healing. The reason they're easy to sell is they do give you an immediate reduction in pain, an immediate analgesic response. So you think it's working, but then it doesn't work to heal the tissues. It does reduce pain, but it won't work in tissue healing. And then on the other end of the spectrum are things that you can find on Amazon for a few $100s. And those actually don't work. And I'll explain that here in a second. But because they're just using regular LEDs, I'll explain it now. So medical grade light therapy equipment, like what we're using in my office, we have a large panel. I meant to bring it home, but we're of 240 diodes. But those diodes are what's called SLDs, super luminous diodes, and SLDs emit coherent light, which just means the light can penetrate deep into the tissues. If you're using a regular LED most of the time, or an LED, just regular LEDs like the stuff you'd find on Amazon, that can't, LEDs emit diffuse light, so it won't go very deep. Some of those things actually are good for wrinkles or age spots because you don't need to get deep. But otherwise you have to use SLDs, and they're very expensive. So the pad we have that has 240 SLDs that we place on people, that pad costs $9,000. So SLDs are expensive. Okay. But if you're using the right type of equipment and the right protocols, then it definitely works. And we use it quite a bit post-surgically to help people heal better and faster. This is an example of somebody who had a total knee replacement, and showing before we started the first treatment and then just 4 weeks later. So here's another example of someone who had fallen down quite a few stairs and broke several ribs. And again, this was at the start of treatment, and then 4 weeks later. It helped his rib fractures heal, but you can just, with bruising, you can see, and wounds, you can see that. So it's just a good example to show what's happening inside your body and in the brain as well when we're treating the brain. But you can't see those things, and you can see the bruising. Okay, so if you want to know a lot more about light therapy itself, then you can go onto my website. It's just peaklilt.com. There's quite a bit of information on there about how light therapy works. But then really quickly, I know we're running out of time, but I have found a device. I've been using it for almost a year now that I actually think works really, really well. And it's much more affordable than most of the devices out there that are medical grade light therapy equipment. And so this is called the DNA Vibe Jazz Band. And it's less than $300. So when I first heard about it, I thought, well, that can't work. but I talked to the developer. He's actually here in Denver. I spoke to him for a few hours last February. And so he is the developer of this device. He's a particle physicist and a mechanical engineer. And his goal, he came together with a medical person who understood light therapy. And their goal was to try to create a device using regular LEDs, but to be able to get the light, the red light and the near infrared light deep into tissues. So he figured out that micro vibration, as well as EMF, which is a very low frequency magnetic pulse, helps to drive the light photons deep into the tissues. So his device is using regular LEDs, and that's why it's less than $300, but it actually works because he's incorporated micro vibration and EMF to get the light into you. And so you can use this. And so I started using it about a year ago, tried it on my patients, tried it on myself. And I was having a jaw issue at the time, and for about a year, and I used it for several weeks, and I was only able to open my jaw maybe like 2 fingers width. And so it's back to normal now. So I feel like it, and after watching my patients use it and getting feedback when they started purchasing this, I really think it works. So that's why I'm sharing this information with you. So you can use it on any kind of injury and also on concussions. And I've, let's see, and a few weeks ago, because I do feel like this works so well, and I knew I was going to be giving this presentation, I had learned that the company, that I could form a little, it's like an informal partnership where there's a link, either this link here, or you just scan the QR code with your phone, and then that takes you to what they call a microsite, my microsite on their website. And then you can purchase the DNA Jazz Band for $20 off of retail price. And then I have created quite a few videos. I'll keep creating more and more that show you how to use it in general and how to use it to treat various injuries, the lower back, the knee, because there's some important aspects to treating, especially the knee. That are, I think they're little nuances, but it can make a better result, and how to treat concussions. And so those are on my YouTube channel, which is just Peak LILT on YouTube. So, yeah, so I've recorded I've got videos here, but I won't play them because we're almost out of time. But these are the same video clips that I have on the YouTube channel. Okay. Right. And then just some specifics here. If you are going to use this to treat a concussion, just some words of caution, and I talk about this in my video clips. Everybody responds a little bit differently to light therapy. Some people have a more sensitive nervous system, and if you have a concussion, you're going to be in a more sensitive state. You want less is more with light therapy. So you only want to use it if you're going to treat, maybe just start with only treating the neck. Because when you treat the neck, whether you're treating the sides of the neck or the back of the neck, you're getting light photons into your internal carotid arteries, into the vertebral arteries in the back of the neck. You're getting light photons into the cerebrospinal fluid, and those structures actually carry the light photons into the brain. So just treating that, when we first started out, we only treated the neck and actually got really good results for concussions at the time. So you don't even have to treat the head directly. But now in the last 3 years or so, we've been treating the head more directly with our system in my business. We're using a low power 200 milliwatt near infrared laser probe going around the entire skull, 5 rows, 5 seconds per point, and we gradually tick up somebody's setting. So I know there's some athletes who live here in Colorado Springs. I would recommend, if you get a concussion, maybe coming in and treating with us, because we can be really specific. But I do think you can effectively treat yourself with this DNA vibe if you just start slow, start with maybe just treating the neck. And then with treating the head, just start with like 5 minutes each side and gradually tick up, and only treat every other day. So there's just a few little nuances, especially when you're working with the brain. And I also explain in my videos how to start, even if you're treating the back or the knee. You don't want to just stick it on there for an hour, because you want to start with a little bit less time and gradually work up. So I give all of those details in my videos. Okay. I think that's it. So here's my email addresses if you want to contact me with questions. The melinda@peaklilt.com is a little bit better, because I find that sometimes when I email people back with my westsidept.co, and that's westsidept.co, not .com, but it seems to go to people's spam folders for some reason. So the melinda@peaklilt.com might be a better way to contact me. And then if you want to sign up for my right now, I have light therapy email newsletters that I send out. Those are primarily to past patients and current patients, focusing on treating dementia and Parkinson's with light, those kinds of things. But I'm going to start up a separate group of athletes and send out anything we're doing. I've got some ideas that we're just getting going, using light therapy to treat the vagus nerves, because we've been doing that for over 2 years now with people that aren't athletes, and the results are pretty amazing for several things. And in particular, we're helping people reduce anxiety by treating the vagus nerves with light, reducing anxiety, improving mental focus and mental clarity. So I feel like that program would help athletes quite a bit with the sports psychology aspect of sports. So we just launched that, and I want to do quite a bit with that because I think we could get great results and help athletes in that regard, in addition to just treating injuries. So just, you can pass me your email and I'll add you to that list. I only tend to send out an email newsletter every month or every 2 months. But if I get that program going, then I can let you know about it that way. Okay. Well, that's it. I'm kind of buzzed through everything, but again, hopefully you'll have access to this the PowerPoint and my videos. But does anyone have any questions? And you can email me your questions as well.
Thank you, Melinda. I believe we sent you like a question list if you want to look at that and answer some of the questions from there.
I know. I actually looked for that several times today. I never saw it. Let's see. Let me double check. Oh, it's attached here. Sorry about that. I missed seeing it. Okay. So yeah, let me go over these questions. And I'll just read the questions and then I can answer. But first question, a high school student injured his back from falling in a basketball game. Later, he lifted weights and eventually developed a herniated disc with compression on the sciatic nerve. Can he recover without surgery? Generally speaking, for people with herniated discs, can they participate in medium to high intensity activities such as 5K running or basketball? That's a great question because that's another area that I focus quite a bit on, is treating bulging and herniated discs. Yes, the answer is yes. And let me just explain briefly the difference between a bulging and a herniated disc. So the disc, that's just the cushion between each vertebrae, and the center of the disc is a gel-like substance. It's surrounded by circular cartilaginous fibers. And so it's kind of like a tire with jelly in the center of it. And we can get little micro tears, usually in the back in the back wall of the disc, which is why it's good to work on your posture and to avoid being bent over for too long. But when the back wall or impact, so falls in sports, etc., car accidents, that causes tearing in the back of the disc. So when we bend to the right, it goes to the left. And when we bend backwards, it goes forward. So that's just how it works, so that it's a protective cushion for our spine. But if we have a weakened area in the back wall of the disc, and then you go to bend over or slump, that's kind of like pushing on a water balloon now. And so the gel kind of goes into the wall and it all kind of bulges. And if you have a large enough bulge, it can irritate the nerve root in the spine, and then you can get pain and muscle spasming just from a bulging disc. And a herniated disc, all that means is now there is a rupture, a hole in the wall of the disc, and the gel can now squirt all the way out and leave the disc, slamming into the nerve root. It sounds like into this person's sciatic nerve, that's more significant. So that's a little trickier to get to heal, but I can speak from personal experience that I had 2 herniated discs and a result of a car accident in 2008, 2 herniated discs. I was just getting progressively worse, tried everything short of injections or surgery. Felt like I was probably going to eventually need spine surgery, but was trying to avoid that. So I was looking into stem cell injections, but that's when I stumbled across the low intensity light therapy in the system and the group that I work with in Toronto, Canada. And they had said that they got results for people for herniated discs. So long story short, I treated myself. When it's a chronic issue or more significant, you have to treat for 3 or 4 months, but it worked. So I'm fine. I never had surgery. I no longer have the issues in my back. So you can use the light therapy. You could use that DNA vibe to treat your back. And I don't know. I've only been using the DNA vibe for a year, but to know if it can get deep enough to heal a herniated disc, because we use that panel of light, but then we use a laser probe, so we're getting really deep. But I would do that for sure. And then there's another method of working with healing disc bulges and herniations. It's called the McKenzie method, and I've used that in my practice. I am planning to get 2 or 3 video clips onto the website demonstrate those exercises soon, but that's what I would recommend. Okay. Let's see, next one. If my child has flat feet or inwardly turned feet and he or she wants to be a competitive athlete, what should we do to prevent injuries related to flat feet or inwardly turned feet? There's a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk about that and the use of orthotics. And I do feel, especially if someone's an athlete and is involved in a sport where there's a lot of pounding and impact, I have found that custom orthotics do work really well to keep the foot stable and to decrease abnormal impact forces going up the rest of your body, up the rest of the chain, especially with something like figure skating where there's a lot of impact. And I've been evaluating and doing custom orthotics since 1997, so for quite a while. And I switched in 2005 to a company that I like the best. It's called Sole Supports, SOLE Supports. So if you can find a provider near you who does sole supports, I like those because of the casting method. I feel like it gets a better true neutral of the foot. And then the material it's made out of, it's you don't want a hard graphite orthotic because that does not absorb impact. So the material that Sole Supports is made out of absorbs impact really well. So that was probably be my advice for that question. Let's see, my child complains about pain in his heels after soccer or basketball practice. What should we do? So again, go get evaluated and treated with a physical therapist, somebody that understands heel pain, because sometimes heel pain can actually be coming from your lower back, even in a younger athlete. It may be actually in the heel, it might be plantar fasciitis, it might be tight Achilles tendons, but it could be coming from the back. So I would try to get in with somebody who understands the whole chain of the body and looks at the lower back in addition to just the feet and the heel itself. Let's see, my child has played soccer for 7 years and he often has pain in the center of his feet. Orthotics help a little, but still pretty painful. What should he do? So same thing, same answer. I get evaluated and treated by a physical to find practitioners, like physical therapists in particular, who do hands-on manual therapy treatment. A lot of physical therapists, especially if you go to a larger clinic where they're seeing lots of people at the same time, no one touches you. They just give you exercises, and exercises are important, but hands-on manual therapy intervention is equally important to exercise. And in the case of healing injuries, I mean, almost more important, especially in the early stages. So try to find somebody who does manual therapy. What are the general rules to decide how much training is overtraining? Well, we discussed that in the presentation. Let's see. When is the right time to resume training after an injury? For some relatively minor injuries, such as a sprained ankle, as long as it's not a bad sprained ankle, we might not see a doctor or have follow-up visits. When should we let our young athletes resume training? That goes back to the pain scale. So if a child is younger, it can be a little trickier to get them to understand what 0 out of 10 means and 10 out of 10 means. But as best you can, it's okay to resume training once there's less than about well, you can train, like we talked about earlier. It's okay to train as long as you can avoid any activity that would cause more than a 4 out of 10 pain level. So if you can do other things in the sport do as much as you can, but just avoid doing anything that would increase the pain. Somebody wanted me to talk about taping, but I'll get videos onto our website within the next month. And if you're on that newsletter list, then I can let you know. I'll just send out a little brief newsletter saying that the videos are up and how to access them. Let's see, what are some common injuries or conditions that pickleball players may experience? I've actually been working a lot in the last at least 5 years with pickleball players. It's very popular right now. So I would probably see more injuries in pickleball players in people who are over age 60, retired folks who have never played tennis before and they want to pick this up. And those are the people primarily hurting themselves. But pickleball injuries they're similar to tennis injuries. So you'll see ankle sprains. The older people are falling, and so they're fracturing things. But not as much shoulder issues as tennis, because this is I haven't actually played it yet. I'm curious about maybe trying it this summer. But I would say mostly ankle type injuries and hips, knees. That's what I've been seeing. Let's see. My 14-year-old boy often has groin strain from sports and it's quite painful. What can he do to prevent it? I would say a combination of the active dynamic warm-up, focusing on those side leg swings once the current injury is healed, but use the light therapy. I think it definitely would help healing the groin strain, but then work diligently on trying to create more flexibility in that muscle group by doing the active dynamic warm-up, and also the lower extremity stabilization exercises. Because one reason we injure muscles like around the hip, for example, is the deep stabilizers of the hip or the deep stabilizers of the knee and the ankle. They aren't working as well to stabilize the joints. So then the big muscle groups are trying to stabilize and you're more likely to pull them. So working with the core and lower extremity stabilization mainly via balance type exercises is what I would recommend. Many of us have knee injuries from overuse. What can we do to protect our knees so that we can still participate in sports activities? Going back to the previous discussion, just the last question, there's a deep muscle in the hip. It's called the gluteus medius, and it's super important actually for knee function, proper knee tracking and protecting the knee. So I would recommend referencing that video clip and working with that exercise for sure. Make sure you're doing the active dynamic warm-up and get assessed, because maybe if you have really flat feet, that actually puts a lot of stress through your knees. And so you might need some type of orthotic device, even if it's an off the shelf. If you don't have to, you may not need a custom orthotic, but something to so that your arch isn't too flat and so your knees aren't as stressed. And then the last question is, are sit-ups safe for young athletes? So sit-ups, actually, there may still be some misconception that sit-ups actually don't work your core. Sit-ups use different muscles than the actual core muscles that help stabilize your spine. And you do have to be careful with sit-ups, because you can overstress your hip flexors, you can strain your back, you can strain your neck. So I'm not a huge fan of sit-ups unless they're done more safely, and I probably don't. It's harder for me to demonstrate that here, but as a general rule, I would say just work with a good trainer, a good physical therapist who can take you through better exercises than sit-ups. And you can do some sit-ups as long as you're not like, trying to hurl yourself up in the air. You really just want to do crunches and have your knees bent and just come up and actively contract or tighten your stomach muscles, but you don't really want to come up higher than your shoulder blades coming off the floor to do that kind of. And then oblique crunches are good, where you're same thing, you're just coming up a little bit and then doing a little bit of the twist, but you're not like hurling yourself up off the ground, because at that point you're really just using your hip flexors against gravity to bring yourself up off of the ground, and that can injure your hip as well as your lower back. Okay, well, I went through those questions, but if anyone has more questions, just feel free to email me.
There's also some questions in the chat if you want to look at those and answer them.
Oh, uh-oh, okay. In the chat, let me try to find it. I'm still in my slides.
It's on the bottom section if you open up Zoom.
Okay, I just got to get out of my slides. Oh, that didn't work. Well. Sorry, I'm not as
just
familiar with using
Put your
Zoom,
cursor
so I don't think that's
on
going to
the
work.
Zoom. Put your cursor on the Zoom interface, and then at the bottom you will see chat.
Well, I closed out my window, so let's see.
Okay. Denani, can you maybe just read the questions to
Yeah.
Melinda? Okay, thank you. Mhm.
Okay. The first question is, what is your stance on protective gear, like butt pads, knee pads? My stance is that proper body mechanics is more important.
Um, I guess it depends, but I mean, I think protective gear, I think both are important. I'll leave it at that. I think both are important, that you definitely need proper body mechanics and to work on your lower extremity, upper extremity, core. But I do think protective gear is also important to help prevent injuries and while you're training. And yeah, and especially with more impact sports like football, you definitely need to be wearing a helmet and protective gear. There's just so many concussions that happen.
The next question is, my nephew suffered from a TFCC partial tear and he can't play tennis right now. What's your suggestion for recovery?
I would say low intensity light therapy for sure, and then work with a physical therapist. You could try acupuncture, the taping. Yeah.
Okay, and one last question. For someone who has motion sickness and can prevent a person from current sport activities, is there a way to train someone not to be motion sick?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do think after studying the brain and the nervous system that you might be able to help that problem with working with some of these brain training exercises and the eye movement training. You could work with a vestibular therapist, someone who's trained specifically in vestibular therapy. That might help quite a bit, in addition to just accessing videos like the exercises I showed you earlier. I think that would be probably the best thing to do, and to work with a vertigo type problem.
Thank you for answering our questions. Thank you again for everyone who spoke, and we'll conclude this seminar today.
Can you scroll down? There's more questions.
Which question is yours?
Is it about the high schooler with a hyperextended elbow?
Okay.
No, the accessory navicular bone.
Okay, so one more question. Do you know about the accessory navicular bone and if physical therapy can help to solve the pain without going through surgery to remove the bone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have seen that in a few figure skaters over the years. That's a tricky one when you have that extra bone in your foot, especially if you have flat feet. But I would say you would probably need a custom orthotic, and then working with somebody to help release tight muscles in the arch, and then work with improving the stability in the foot and ankle all the way up into the hip. I think that would be your best bet. You can probably also, more acutely, I've used taping to help, but in the short term, and just trying to work with somebody to improve the intrinsic strength in their foot, as well as orthotic intervention.
Melinda,
Thank
there is
you.
one question. It says, how long does it take for a high schooler to recover from a bad hyperextended elbow? What other sports can he do in the meantime? How can he stay active without re-injure the elbow? Hyperextended elbow, yeah.
injury. But then if the person wanted to work with other sports, then I would, they could try, well, they'd probably be able to run, and they might be able to cycle, lower body type of
100多人
activity. You wouldn't want to do anything like swimming or anything that was going to still use the arm in a repetitive movement kind of way.
Sorry, everyone, we're out of time today. So if you have any more questions, you can email Melinda. That will conclude our seminar. Thank you to everyone who spoke today. And the next seminar will be by Dr. Chen if you guys would like to join that one.
Okay, thank you, Melinda, for your time.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Thank
we're
you
at
very
the
much.
meeting now. Yeah.